What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed. And you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Blood Moon Box, a monthly subscription box service for period pads and tampons to help support all humans who have a cycle for that time of the month, and no need to run to a store to mix and match period supplies that don't cater to the entire ebbs and flows of your cycle. There are 2 box options based on your cycle, light and medium, and then heavy. And in addition to the period products, you'll also receive PMS herbal teas, a candle, and some other items for your time of the month. You can reserve a box by navigating to bloodmoonbox.com. And bloodmoonbox.com is on a mission to destigmatize the idea of period blood. At Blood Moon Box, they believe that it is the time to honor the enchanting magic within every person who has a cycle. So join us in embracing the magic of your cycle with Blood Moon Box. Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Today's episode is with Anita Moorjani. After a 4-year battle with cancer, Anita fell into a coma and was given days to live. And as her doctors gathered to revive her, she journeyed into a near-death experience called an NDE, where she was given the choice to return to her physical form or to continue into this new realm. And she chose the former, and when she regained consciousness, her cancer began to heal. And to the amazement of her doctors, she was free of the countless tumors and cancer within weeks. Her book, Dying to Be Me, has sold over 1 million copies worldwide in now over 45 languages. And she's also the author of What If This Is Heaven and Love, a story about who you really are. And I had the pleasure of hearing her inspiring talk at a conference last fall, and I'm just so delighted to welcome her to the show to talk about a highly requested topic, near-death experiences. I also read her book, Dying to Be Me, years ago, and I was so moved by it. So I'm so excited to welcome Anita Moorjani to the show. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you, Yasmin, and thanks for that beautiful introduction.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, likewise. So Anita, to kick it off, what is a near-death experience? I know that we kicked it off, speaking about it in your bio, but can you tell us, what you went through and what that experience was like?
Okay, so for me, what it was like was it's being disengaged from your body. So realizing that you live on beyond your physical body. So I knew that I was dying. I was going through the dying process, my spirit had already started to separate itself from my physical body. And I realized I continued to exist. And for me, it felt like I was super powerful. So there was my physical body, weak and laying on the hospital bed, dying. But yet I was feeling amazing and strong and free and filled with love and just joyous. And I was feeling more incredible than I've ever felt in my entire life. And I could see my body lying on the bed. I wasn't part of my body, but I felt incredible. And I knew that I was going to be fine. And when I say I don't mean my physical body. It was like, it doesn't matter if I live in the physical or not. There's this knowing that I am eternal and the eternal me is fine. It's just going to go on to the next chapter of this eternal life that we all have.
Wow. It's so fascinating, Anita. And, just to give context for folks listening, you had been battling cancer for 4 years at that time, and you were actually in a coma and given just a few days to live, correct?
Yes, hours
And
to live.
hours to live. And then you like had this miraculous situation, right, where your cancer began to heal when you came back from the other side. Can you talk about what you kind of experienced in that state, and also what type of cancer you had, just so folks who are listening can really understand the miracle, that happened to you.
So I had lymphatic cancer, which means cancer of the lymph glands and the lymphatic system. And it was so they call it lymphoma. And it had spread throughout my entire lymphatic system. So I had tumors from the base of my skull all around my neck. And these tumors were the size of golf balls. And they were under my arms, in my chest, all the way down to my abdomen. And my body stopped absorbing nutrition. So I weighed about 85 pounds. I didn't have the strength to stand up or walk. I would lay down most of the time, but my lungs were filled with fluid. And so I had difficulty breathing. And when I would lie flat, I would choke on my own fluid, the fluid from my lungs. And I was I looked like a skeleton. I weighed 85 pounds. My muscles had completely deteriorated. And I was in so much pain and so much discomfort that on this day, February the 2nd, 2006, I went into a coma, and the doctors told my family that I wouldn't even make it till the next day. They said basically, the next 24 hours was pretty much all I had. And they didn't expect me to come out of the coma. But after the near-death experience, after experiencing that freedom on the other side and the knowledge that it was not my time to die yet, and I was given a choice as to whether to come back, and with some coaxing, I did come back. And after coming back and opening my eyes, around 30, 36 hours after going into the coma, I started to open my eyes, and my body just started to heal. And at first, the doctors just kept telling my family, don't raise your hopes. People go in and out of comas. But I didn't go back into the coma after I opened my eyes. I was a little bit delirious, so I was a little bit like groggy. But slowly over the days, I started to get more and more clarity. And I kept saying, do you know, my dad is with me right now. And he said it's not my time to die, because I had seen my deceased father when I was in that state. And in about 4 or 5 days, the doctors noticed my tumors had shrunk by about 60%. In 3 weeks, they were having trouble finding any trace of cancer. And in 5 weeks, they let me go home to live my life cancer-free.
Wow. I'm so moved by that story. I mean, because it just opens up such a kind of philosophical conversation about life and what it means to be in the physical body. And you speak about leaving that physical body and almost like witnessing the physical body, which I think is so fascinating. Why is this so meaningful? How has this experience changed your views on life and death and kind of, what we're here for?
So it's basically radically changed everything, including my priorities, my values, everything, because it made me question why I was doing all the things I was doing. I understood why I got the cancer. It was because I'd never allowed myself to truly express myself and be who I am. I had grown up as my parents are Indian, they're Hindu, and I had grown up in a culture where I was being groomed for an arranged marriage. However, I lived in Hong Kong, and which is predominantly a Chinese city, but I went to a British school where all my peers, my school friends, and my classmates were all British from the UK. So I was exposed to different cultures, and I completely rejected my parents' values and fought against it because I didn't want an arranged marriage. So I struggled a lot growing up, and eventually gave in to an arranged marriage, but then ran away from it just before the wedding, which caused a lot of furor, and it caused me to be ostracized from my community. And I was told that nobody would ever marry me after what I had done. So the culture of my parents was a culture where there's gender disparity, and a woman's worth is measured by how valuable she is to the men around her, and how she serves the men around her. And we were not allowed to make choices and decisions of our own. We were discouraged from working and having independence. Whereas I was someone who wanted to have a job and work and earn my own money and travel around the world and have independence. I didn't want to depend on a man, on any man. And so I clashed with my culture, with my dad, and but always felt like I was not good enough. I always carried that burden of not fitting in and somehow being wrong and being bad. Um, and because I watched all the other Indian people of my age, Indian women of my age, just have arranged marriages and do what they were supposed to do. And it was so unappealing for me. I wasn't ready to settle down. Um, and yet, by the time I was 26, I was considered old. I was considered too old to be married. I was being told things like, you're not a spring chicken anymore. You have to settle now. And you can't you can't be choosy, and so on. So basically, that's what I lived with. And I realized when I was on the other side that there is nothing wrong with me. In fact, there was always a spark in me that needed to be expressed. And it was because I had repressed myself all these years that my body developed a disease. It was my body's way of expressing itself or fighting back against the life that I was being forced to live versus the life I wanted to live.
And so, how, coming out of this experience, how did this change the rest of your life, from the day to day kind of things that you choose to do or how you spend your time? And I think specifically what really caught my attention was the way you kind of understood energy, coming out of that
Yeah.
experience. Can you talk to us more about that? Because we've had folks, Dr. Eben Alexander was on the show. We've also had Dr. Jill Bolt-Taylor on the show, spoke about her stroke. And I just remember the conversations around like what it meant to sort of be in this non-physical field, and then what that experience was like coming back into the physical, and how one operated and moved through life after.
Great question. So one of the things I felt when I was in that realm was how incredibly light and free and energized I was. And I wanted to stay there, but and I didn't understand why I was being coerced to come back, because life was so heavy here. And then I started to understand that I was supposed to bring that state over here for a couple of reasons. One is because that's what we're meant to do. And secondly, it was also because it felt like that was my mission. My purpose was to bring it here, bring that light to this physical, because it's needed here, because we seem to really fall into the darkness when we're here in this physical. And I had fallen into that darkness. And to me, the darkness, or what lowers our energy, is fear. So it was always a case of fear of not being good enough, fear of um, disapproval, fear because I'm a woman, and so I was always meeting my dad's disapproval. I was a daughter instead of a son. So it's a fear of always not being good enough. And it's also a feeling of a lack of self-love, self-worth, self-value. It's a lack of all these things, a lack of value, a lack of love for self. And it's all of these things that contribute to our energy just being completely depleted, making ourselves almost invisible to the world. And when I was on that side, I realized that's not how I'm meant to live my life. That's not how anybody is meant to live their life. We are beautiful, bright souls, full of energy, full of light. We can't let this physical world diminish that. We have to hold on to that and remember who we truly are, so that we can continue to be the light in this world. And I understood that if I came back and brought what I was learning there, brought those values of knowing that I had to shine my light here, no matter what's going on in this physical world, I have to keep shining my light. And by allowing my light to dim, I was actually contributing to the darkness instead of shining light on this world and everyone in it. So that was one of the biggest lessons I learned. And I realized that we're supposed to bring that light and shine it here. That's why we come here with that intention. But when I came back into the body and I started living, I realized it's a lot harder than we think. It's actually extremely challenging, because we're always being fed fear-based messages. Always. We're always being fed messages about illnesses instead of well-being, messages about fear, because mainstream media, social media, our hospitals, medical institutions, all of these things spread fear instead of hope and love and joy and unity. We tend to, we have actually created and built this entire culture, this paradigm we live in. It's based on fear and competitiveness and lack of worthiness. And so I realized, wow, this is challenging, because when I start speaking about my messages, trying to uplift people, instead of people feeling that oh my God, this is an amazing message, I have to run with it, and this is how I should be living, you're also dealing with a lot of people who defend the darkness, who say, oh, you're delusional and you don't have proof of what happened to you. And they're actually defending darkness and fear and violence and negativity, instead of saying, hey, what a great idea, let's uplift the planet. And so you realize that actually it is more challenging than it seems. At the time when I came back, I thought, oh, yeah, of course, now that I know how to bring a piece of heaven here, let me bring it here and live that way. And life is going to be peachy. But you realize it's not necessarily the case.
Mm. Yeah, wow. That makes a lot of sense. And interestingly enough, when we're connecting with people who don't have that direct experience, or that experience of the love, the freedom, the lightness, the love that you felt in that space, it is so hard to explain because our minds are trying to always make sense of things. And, so I'm really curious about, because at this point, like, it's an objective truth, what happened to you was miraculous, so the fact that it happened is just incredible, right? It kind of defies all the ways that we understand how tumors work, how cancer works. So what do you think the link is between healing our physical body and your experience of that near-death experience, that you spoke about? I'm just curious because, you know, and we can even kind of dive into like what it means to have consciousness illuminating the physical body. But what do you think that link is? And maybe you could talk about your own just kind of direct experience.
So for me, the link was, um, of course, because I experienced it, it felt directly related because I had this clarity that my soul was not being itself. It was not living fully. It was not doing what it came here to do. And so my body was not being used to express itself in the way that my soul had intended. And so it was like my body was fighting back, like, oh, you weren't meant to repress yourself. You weren't supposed to squash yourself, and you were supposed to be out there shining. And so the direct relation is that, then your body starts to repress and um, it starts to rebel. And but more importantly, um, I actually started to realize that if I don't want to be that person who had cancer, if I don't want to get cancer again, I needed to still live my life in the way that I had learned from the near-death experience, regardless of whether people believe me, don't believe me, think I'm crazy, think I'm delusional. I did not want to go back to being that person that I was before because that was the person that got cancer. I needed to be true to myself. And being true to myself means being true to my spirit, who my spirit and soul came here to be. And we all think, and I was guilty of this too, before the near-death experience, I used to work hard at trying to be spiritual. In other words, I used to think, oh, do I need to do more to erase my bad karma? Do I need to pray more? Do I need to meditate more? What do I need to do to be more spiritual? Death taught me that you don't work at being spiritual because you are spiritual already. You are a spirit that is expressing itself through this body. You're born spiritual, and when you die, you return back to spirit. Sometimes you lose yourself during life, but you never lose your spirit. It's always there. It's always trying to express itself through you. What we do is we end up having layers of what I call inauthenticity, layers of masks that we put on in order to survive society. And as we put these layers of masks, we bury our spirit deeper and deeper. So in order to be spiritual, and I use air quotes, in order to be spiritual, it's not about doing more and being more. It's about undoing. It's about letting go and releasing all these masks and layers that we've added through our lives and really uncovering who we truly are. So being spiritual and being your authentic self are one and the same thing. So I realized that I needed to live authentically to myself. And what ended up happening was I realized that I used to move around in a lot of communities and societies just to be able to fit in. And I used to try and win other people's approvals. So I stopped doing that. I literally, my husband and I, we moved into a different town in a different neighborhood where people didn't know me, they didn't know us. So I had an opportunity to start afresh. And again, I know for a lot of people, this may not be possible to move, but I'm just sharing how important it was to me because and you can make that choice if it's really important to you. Because for me, it was such a huge revelation that I realized that the person I had become was the person who got cancer because of what they had become. So I now realized that I needed to be who my soul intended to be. So I needed to go on a self-discovery to discover who I am and not worry about what anybody said or thought of me. And so there were people who said that I was delusional because of my new beliefs, in how my body healed. And the doctors couldn't explain it. They absolutely had no medical explanation. So they said it was a spontaneous remission and that I was lucky to be alive. But inside me, I understood exactly why I healed. And I knew it could be replicated if people understood it. But I also realized that too many people were unwilling to explore it, research it, or try and understand it because we were so entrenched in the old methods of practicing medicine and in the old methods of understanding disease. So one of the things that I started to do was, for me, well, first of all, my values changed. And I realized that one of my biggest values is my well-being. And in order to have good well-being, you always have to do what it takes to uplift your energy, which means you don't take on a job you hate just to pay the bills, because your energy is your most important resource. It's my number one resource, is to keep my energy uplifted. So the new me doesn't say yes to anything that depletes my energy. That's number one. The second value that really changed for me is time. I realized that time is super valuable for me because once the time is gone, you can't get it back. And so I really, again, it ties in with value. I really measured what was valuable to me and spent my time doing those things. And those things had to be meaningful to me. They had to contribute in some way to the world, but also to my energy state, because I never wanted to perform services that depleted my own energy, because the more you deplete your energy, the less you have for your well-being and for your joy. And then you start to develop disease again, and we're back to square one. So these are the kinds of changes for me. And people noticed that I was no longer saying yes to a lot of things, that I was doing things differently, that I placed more importance on loving myself and my own well-being and my own joy. And I was judged and criticized and lost some friends. But over the years, they've seen how much my life has changed and how much I am now able to do in terms of service and for the world, because it made me a lot more powerful. And now I have people coming to me and saying that, oh, wow, I love what you're doing. I want to be able to do what you do. And some of these are the very same people that thought I was delusional when I started by changing my values, because I placed the value of earning money much lower, because most of us, we kill ourselves making money. We kill other people, just out of competition. But for me, my values completely changed. We live in a world that places money over and above everything. It places money over and above our well-being, our relationships with others. Money is more important than in our healthcare system. Money is valued higher than our health. In our education system, money is valued higher than actually our education, and so on. You can look at every system we have. The highest value is money. And so we grow up with this value ingrained in us, even if we don't realize it. But death was actually the only thing that taught me that my highest values need to be my well-being, my energy state, and my time. And money will come when I take care of those three things.
Oh my gosh. I just want to highlight, underscore, exclamation mark, that whole piece, because it is such a profoundly important point, I think, in this game that we're all in right now, in the kind of mainstream consensus reality, which is, this accumulation of wealth, or this desire to prove ourselves, prove our worth, to move up in this hierarchy, when, at this core level, we're really just all spirits having this short-lived
Yes.
human experience, and we're going to return to that spiritual self when this life is over. And I think it's interesting, is I do think a lot of times people don't remember that they're going to die one day. I'm like,
Yes.
you can't take everything materialistically with you. This is just an experience. And so I really, really, I just love that. And then you spoke a little bit about not taking things on unless they were energy uplifting, and
Yes.
certainly not taking anything that was energy depleting. And I also want to underscore that point, because I think oftentimes we sort of assume that there's an exchange happening just based on financial value, but the energetic value of an exchange in something is something that most people don't really grasp or understand, or even think about before taking something on, like just the back end energy costs of dealing with difficult people, or taking something on that your mind wants to do, but your heart is not in it, right? Just like the amount of energy that's going to cost you is so much more expensive, like in the long term.
100%, because people have not learned to value their energy state and their time. And those are two different things, because if you say, oh, let's say you really don't want to do something, but somebody strong arms you and they say, look, it's only going to take 30 minutes of your time. Surely you can spare 30 minutes for me. So you kind of go, okay, I'll do it for you. It's just 30 minutes. And I have people say this to me all the time, like, surely you can do this for me. What people don't always realize or measure up is that it might be 30 minutes of your time, and bad enough, you've given 30 minutes of your time, which you won't get back, which you could have been doing something else that's uplifting. But the second thing that's happened is that your energy level has gone down from doing something that you didn't want to do. So in other words, you haven't just lost 30 minutes of your time. Okay, maybe you're willing to lose that. You've also lost a whole bunch of energy, and you don't know how much. It depends on how much you didn't want to do that thing, whatever it is. And so you've actually lost two things. So you've now got to recuperate that energy, but we don't realize this. And then we jump into the next thing we do, and then we don't realize why at the end of the day, why am I so tired? I didn't do that much. It's because you're not realizing where you're doing things you really don't want to do. And you keep doing them because you think you're being a good Samaritan and you think you're being of service. But over time, that really chips away at your well-being. And that was the person I was when I got cancer.
Wow. For those listening, this is like the mic drop moment. So I really, really, I want to really underscore this conversation, because I really feel like this is where most people are in a trap. And I frankly was in that trap for a long time myself. And so I understand, how the construct that we grow up in can sometimes feel like that's all there is, but there's so much more. And if you pay attention to your energy, you'll have a much more exciting life. And so also, for those listening, Anita, can you share any insights on how to cultivate this self-love and acceptance? Because I do feel like this is kind of a theme I've been hearing about over and over again, is this lack of self-worth, lack of self-love, disconnection from self. So how would you kind of coach someone or talk to someone about practices they could do, or ways they could think about deeply connecting to self? Yeah.
So there are many, many ways. And one thing they have to realize is that self-love is not selfish. It's not egotistical. It is a necessity. It really is a necessity. It's not a luxury. Your life depends on it. Your survival depends on you loving yourself. And one of the things that I grew up believing is that self-love is selfish and you have to serve other people, but serving yourself is selfish. And so I learned, like, to see other people as God. You know, you look in someone's eyes, try and find God in everybody's eyes. But it was only when I died did I realize that I never learned to find God in my own eyes. And so death taught me that all of us, every single one of us, are an expression of God. That is what our soul is, or our spirit is. It's an expression, it's a piece of God expressing itself through this physical body. And so, as much as we are depleting our energy for other people, doing things we don't want to do, just trying to be of service or reduce karma or whatever it is, whatever our reasons are, we need to realize that we ourselves are an expression of God, and to not love yourself and to deny who you are and to label when you please yourself and when you love yourself and when you do things to uplift yourself, to label that as being selfish or egotistical is labeling the part of God that is expressing itself through you as being selfish and egotistical. You are denying that part of God that is expressing itself through you. You're denying it, its expression, when you do that and when you don't love yourself or allow yourself to be a full expression of who you came here to be. So that's the first thing that people really have to get and realize. You are God in expression, in physical expression. And then we can start to do things by starting to become aware. What actually makes me feel uplifted? What raises my energy? What makes me feel happy? What makes me feel joy? And you can do this no matter what, even if you are unwell and sick and have some chronic illnesses. You will actually notice your health improve if you start to become aware. And what I ask people to do is I give them an exercise and I say, I want you to write down, I want you to have two lists. One is all the things you do on a daily basis that uplift your energy. And on the other side, on the other column, I want you to write all the things that you do on a daily basis that deplete your energy. And nearly everybody finds that they do more things that deplete their energy than uplift their energy. And I tell them, if this is what you're finding, which 9 times out of 10, that's what they're finding, I say, I want you to consciously now start to increase the list of things that increase your energy. Add to it, whatever it is, whether it means soaking in a bathtub or going and taking some time out to read a book, taking yourself out to the park or for a walk. You have to do that, and you have to start to lower the list, to reduce the list of things that you don't like doing. Find things on that list you don't have to do, because you have to think of yourself as a battery that needs to be charged. And if you are discharging more than you're charging, of course your body is going to develop disease. When our cell phone shows, when the battery icon shows red, we freak out and we go and charge it. But when it's our bodies, we don't. We keep going. And then we kind of go, oh, why is my body sick? Oh my God, I'm a victim of illness. No, you're not. You've been depleting your energy for so long, you stopped noticing.
I love the analogies, the battery and also just taking inventory of what is giving you energy and what's kind of taking it away. And it's funny, I was just visiting my parents, and my dad is a physician, and he was saying, he oftentimes asks people, do you enjoy your job or do you enjoy what you do every day? And he said, 9 times out of 10, he found that a lot of people didn't actually enjoy what they were doing day to day. And that,
Yep.
that really adds up. And so I love this exercise of at least infiltrating your life, your day-to-day life, with as much play, as much, connection to self as you can, and then being really conscious of it and being aware of it. And I also sometimes I do this list for myself, and I notice like social media. Oh my gosh, what a huge depletion! It's just like 90 99% of the content on social media, maybe that's a little bit high, but most of it is sort of just the back end energy cost piece is something we're not really accounting for. So I love that. Okay,
Yes.
so folks listening, take a list and write down things that uplift you, and then write down things that deplete your energy, and really kind of just get a awareness around how you're spending your time.
Yeah, and ask yourself, how often do you laugh? It's really important to laugh. And if you're finding that you don't, you can go through days without laughing, then alarm bells should go off.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's so funny after all the conversations I've had in the world of spirituality and consciousness, it's like humor just feels like it's the highest realm of consciousness, because we could just laugh about the idea that, this is just a hilarious kind of experience that we're all part of, and
Exactly.
deflates importance, right, on everything. So
Yep.
you have also two books, What If This Is Heaven, and another book called Love, A Story About Who You Really Are. Can you tell us?
Actually, I have more. I have more. Sensitive is the New Strong is the latest book.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I've read that one. Okay, so would love to
Oh,
hear a little bit about all your latest book. Let's talk about that, and then if we have time, we can go back to What If This Is Heaven about. But I'd love to hear more about your latest book, and then why you decided to write it.
so the reason I decided to write it, so it's called Sensitive is a New Strong. And the subtitle is The Power of Empaths in an Increasingly Harsh World. So the reason I decided to write it was because I wanted to explain or express the struggle that it is to make the world a kinder place, a more collaborative place that values well-being and energy and values collaboration more than it does competition and greed and ruthlessness, because we seem to be a society that admires ruthlessness, competition, greed, because we vote those kinds of people into power. We spend more money on killing people than we do on feeding people. So I realized that it's a huge force that we're up against if we want a kinder world. So I don't like fighting against what I don't want to see, because that depletes my energy. What I do is I go off and create my own world of what I want, and then I let people join me. So I, say to people, I'm not forcing anything on anyone. This is how I live. This works for me, and you can believe me, follow me, join me, or not. That's entirely up to you. So what's been interesting is the number of people that have actually supported me in the things that I say regarding this, the I guess the state of our world. Because the way I see it, if we continue the way we have, where we value ruthlessness and greed, and see these as powers and vote this and admire people who have these qualities, and we seem to see these qualities as strengths, and while at the same time we see qualities as empathy, sensitivity, compassion, we see these as weaknesses. And we actually judge people with those qualities, and we don't let them take leadership positions. And so you look around at the world and you think, no wonder the world is in this state, if these are the values that we're growing up to believe in.
Right, right. No, absolutely, absolutely. It's interesting because I think we have kind of privileged a one type of leader as opposed to, taking like different considerations of what does leadership actually mean, right? It's
Yeah.
inspiring people in a very kind of different way. And I think actually it goes back to some of the feminine and masculine qualities as well. And
Yes.
I feel like we're moving into this trend where the feminine, leading with the feminine, is actually becoming more and more popular. It's just what I've noticed. Like even in my own business, I noticed that the slower I go, the faster things move. And the more I'm patient and spending time with my own intuition and meditating and getting insights when I'm very present and grounded and compassionate and heart-centric is when I get all the things I want, but I'm not grasping and going after them and using just my linear, logical mind to kind of accumulate something or move in a direction. Now, I think both of these things are important. And I feel like we've just privileged one. We've sort of been moving faster without like stopping to think about why we're moving in a certain direction, so it's
Exactly.
yeah.
100%. And so, and I believe that if we keep going in the direction that we have been going, where we value all where we value things like greed and the ruthlessness and so on, basically the masculine traits, we would be driving ourselves to our own extinction. And and I feel the only way to change it is if we actually start changing the parameters around which we measure strength, and we actually start saying being sensitive and vulnerable is a strength. Being empathic is a strength. Once we start redefining what strength is, and when people start looking up at those qualities and see them as strengths instead of weaknesses, that's when we'll start to see a shift in our paradigm. That's what drove me to write that book, because people would mistake my kindness as a weakness. And this happens the world over. Kindness and empathy and compassion gets mistaken for weakness. We need to say those are strengths.
Amen. Amen. I love that so much. And it's so needed, this type of work and knowledge. So we'll leave the link to that book in the show notes. And, how did you see the kind of the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, shifting people's perspective when it comes to connecting with others and themselves? Did you feel like there was a positive shift, a negative shift, just based on some of the stuff that you were working on?
It's interesting that it actually created some extremely positive and some extremely negative. It created a bit of a polarity. And the trick for a lot of people was to ride the positive without falling into the negative. And so I remained very, very hopeful that the positive would actually win out. And we're still seeing a lot of the repercussions. But my own thoughts around the pandemic was that as long as we remembered that really what's most important is the unity, because one of the sad things that for me that I saw happening was that people were becoming extremely divided, so much so that they put their opinions about what was happening, whether it was your opinion about COVID itself or the vax, people put their opinions, the importance of their opinions, uh, way above their relationships with people. So relationships were even destroyed because people had polar opposite views and opinions. And to me, that was the saddest part. It doesn't matter what your opinion is. And to me, it doesn't matter which side you're on, what you believe in. We have to remember that all of us, regardless of which side of the fence you're on, we're all going to die one day. We're all going to be on the other side one day. And the most important thing is the relationship you have with the people around you. And you're going to realize that when we cross over. It's more about listening to each other than trying to defeat each other with our side of the argument. And I saw a lot of that happening, where people were just trying to defeat each other and knock each other down instead of just listening and trying to understand, why do you have that opinion? And then, okay, now you listen to me and I'll tell you why I have that opinion. And we realize that both opinions, both sides, come from a place of fear. And if we can come together and approach everything from a place of love, we can heal it a lot faster. So I do think a lot of positive came out of it, but I think that we could have avoided a lot of unnecessary pain and heartache if people really knew that the true value should have been the connection, the love, and the elimination of the fear. The fear is what makes people go into survival mode and become very competitive and divisive.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. Amazing. That's so fascinating. I am super curious, Anita, what sort of things have surprised you the most on this journey, looking back since 2006?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. I'm trying to think. It's the reason I'm hesitating is because there have been a lot of things that have surprised me, but in different ways. Like some have been amazingly positive, great surprises, and some have been like, oh, I didn't expect that from humanity, a surprise in the opposite way. So I'm trying to figure out what to dive into first. I think one of the things that really caught me by surprise was very early on when I discovered. So when I came back from the other side and the cancer healed, I really thought that I had something positive to share and wanted to shout it from the rooftops because I really believed it would help a lot of people. What really surprised me was the amount of resistance I was getting. It was like people wanted to knock me down, and they don't want to know that, oh, you can, there are different ways to heal your disease, and these ways are more lasting and permanent because you get to the root. And and they people didn't want to hear it, and instead made me sound like I was crazy or delusional or woo woo for speaking of these things, which I honestly thought could save people's lives. So that came as a real surprise. Oh, they're not interested in healing cancer after all. They just want to do it through pharmaceuticals, or maybe it's because people don't want to take responsibility for their health. But for whatever reason, the amount of resistance shocked me. So I stopped sharing unless I was in very, very safe groups. What surprised me on the opposite end of the scale is that how much then I discovered that there were a lot of people who were interested, but they're not part of mainstream. So basically, mainstream media, and this is a big shock, that what mainstream media tells you is way behind what you find out when you move around in some other closed circles. And what surprised me was the amount of support I then received from people who truly were interested in what I was in what I was sharing. And so people like Wayne Dyer coming into my life, and all kinds of people like that. He's just one example of a ton of people like that that came into my life. And even Ellen DeGeneres shared my message and told everybody in her audience to read my book, and Dr. Oz. And so then I started to realize, oh, there is a whole other faction of people that really do believe in it and want to help spread this message because they're trying it out for themselves and it works. And so those have kind of been, and the surprise is also that it's almost like two opposing things. You have one faction that are so against it, and another faction that are like, oh my God, you've got to share this with everyone. Everyone needs to know this. So
Wow.
that's
Oh.
that's what comes to mind as one of the biggest surprises is the contrast.
Yes, yeah, it's so interesting because I've experienced a lot of the same when it comes to talking about consciousness and intuition and spirituality. It's like there's some people who like their whole philosophical view in life will like not work if they even entertain, an iota of a
Yes.
conversation that is like out of their jurisdiction of reality. And so it's just so interesting. I'm like, the inability to just be open-minded to everything, right? Not accepting, you don't have to accept everything, but just being open, I think to me is a very interesting characteristic trait. It's like you don't have to necessarily believe or accept something, but to just allow people to share their opinions and without condemnation or immediate judgment is just
Yes.
it's a wild characteristic trait. I'm just like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
But so Anita,
it really is.
I feel like I could talk to you forever. You have so much knowledge. And even just in this conversation, I feel such powerful energy, in your voice and your resonance. And so, what do you want to tell our listeners about their health and wellness and well being as we wrap up? What's the main takeaway and call to action for the audience?
So the call to action would be for you to actually pay attention to your energy and what uplifts you, and to really have more fun in your life. And it doesn't matter where you are in your health trajectory. Focus on more fun. And if you are dealing with a challenge, a medical challenge, you need to surround yourself with people who can see you as being healed. One of the things I actually say, and it's a shout out I do all the time, attention medical doctors, please do not give people fear-based diagnoses, because you're just setting them back. You've just depleted their energy, the very energy they need for healing. So please do not. So if you have a doctor that is giving you fearful diagnosis that's making you weep, change doctors and go to a doctor or a practitioner or a complementary health caregiver who can actually give you hope. Never take away somebody's hope. Surround yourself around people that will continue to give you hope. The other thing I would want people to know, especially if you're dealing with a health challenge, ask yourself, are you willing to take responsibility for your health and know that it's in your hands to heal and reverse it? Or so the people who find who with whom it's harder for me to impart my message are the ones who are not willing to take responsibility and believe that they are a victim of what's happened to them. It's like, oh, I'm a victim of this happened to me, I need drugs to fix it. It's so my message doesn't land on that kind of mindset. But if you know you are someone who is open to this and open to taking responsibility for your well-being, people at any stage can actually reverse it if they want to, and if they are willing to really start uplifting themselves and their energy and following their heart and being their authentic selves. And that's basically what I would like to leave people with. And don't forget to have fun and joy and eat chocolate and do the things you love.
Amazing, Anita. Thank you so much. And are there any resources that you can point folks to in order to learn more about you, your work, your books? Where can people find you?
So my website is anitamoorjani.com. That's ANITAMOORJANI.com. I also have an online membership platform where I do live Zoom videos with the audience, and we have a lot of resources in there. That's called the Anita Moorjani Sanctuary.com. And of course, I have a YouTube channel with a ton of free videos. I have my books, which are all available on Amazon, and I have Instagram, Facebook, and I think I even have a TikTok.
Amazing, amazing. And we'll leave those links all in the show notes so that people can find you. But this was so incredible, Anita. I'm just so excited that we get to share this information with our audience. And thank you so much for everything you've done to support people on the planet and to help elevate consciousness. Really, really appreciate you so much.
Oh, wow. Thank you for having me on, and it's my pleasure.
Oh. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about near-death experiences with Anita Moorjani, and you can tune in to Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again.